guys. Thank you for honoring us with your invitation to come and speak to you tonight. It's always a pleasure to come and share what's going on in our buildings. And also, just so you know, you always have an open invite to step into our buildings at any time you need a little warm fuzzies, because our elementary buildings are happy places and filled with the joy of learning and lots of hugs. And almost all of us now have a really cute puppy there, too. So we are here tonight to give you an overview of, aside from our district level data that I think you're probably familiar with from the data dashboard from Carrie Crocker's presentations. I think she shared most of the winter reporting with you, the data reporting. A little bit more in depth of how we use data more globally at the building, classroom, and individual level to inform our instructional decision making and try and move kids forward in their learning. So we looked at basically 4 questions, and the first one is, what are some of the sources of data? I hope you guys have this on your screen because that looks a little blurry up there. We did include a link in here to the district data that includes, you know, the very specific percentages of proficiencies at our buildings by subgroup, by year, by either Fontes and Pinnell or Fastbridge or MSTEP assessment. That's pretty beefy charts and graphs. If you want to look into that at some point, I'm sure you can take a few minutes to do that, or maybe a couple of hours. There's a lot there. But in addition to that, at the classroom or individual student level, there's a wealth of different sources of data. And these obviously aren't applicable to every child every time. They're more prescriptive based on the individual need of the student or of the classroom teacher's interest in trying to move instruction along. If she sees or he sees that kids are stuck on a certain concept, to try and dig deeper and figure out what's going on. And those run the gamut of academic to behavior. And so, for example, running records, that's right up there at the top. That's literally listening to a child read and taking detailed notes on exactly what they're saying, the errors they're making, the self-corrections they might be making, so you can really dive deeply into specific patterns of errors that they're making to address in your instruction. Progress monitoring, for example, or quick dipsticks would take just maybe 2 minutes to assess a very precise skill that a student might be struggling with. A lot of times we see those used particularly with special education students. Behavior data could be anything from building data. When are we seeing the most issues? Is the afternoon recess more troublesome? Do we need more support out there? To individual student behavior charts. Is the afternoon more difficult for this child as opposed to the broader building? And we go on from there, really kind of determining where the need is, where the question is, if you want to think about it as like an inquiry cycle, trying to determine the best way to get the information we need and applying a very targeted assessment to that need. So I am going to hand off to Harleen, who's going to tackle the next question, which is, what does that stuff tell us? We're doing all these assessments. What are we finding out?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Harleen Singh. I'm the principal of Eastover Elementary. Thank you again for having us here. So several of you have been a part of our district stakeholder meetings for MICIP, so you know that the essence of MICIP is truly to assess the whole child and their needs. And so Dr. Hillberry shared a little bit of how we accumulate that data, or how we, different sources that we use. So what I wanted to do is some of our noticing. So of course we look at percentages, but to be honest, that doesn't really paint the picture for us. I think when we are talking to our teachers, we're trying to understand the story that the data tells. So these are some of the celebrations that we wanted to share with you. One, we noticed that our math and ELA scores are trending in the upward direction, which is exciting. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we do have a unified curriculum for both ELA and mathematics. And so we know that we have that horizontal alignment, but we also have that vertical alignment. So same language, same practices. Teachers are building upon each other from grade level to grade level. So I think that really has celebrated some of the successes that we have seen. And so some of the things, the bullet points after that, really reflect on that growth we've seen. So the fact that we have increased independence, the fact that students are able to problem solve and use multiple strategies. So if a child is presented with a math problem, instead of saying, this is the only way to solve it, they have these conversations of, this is how I solved it, this is how you can solve it, and they really have those rich conversations to be able to really think about multiple ways of solving a problem. And with that comes increased confidence in math skills, being able to talk about math, and then obviously the stamina. I think that, the reading stamina, the writing stamina, we want to see our children to be able to persevere, to have resilience, to really grapple with some other difficulties. So we've been able to see that increase. Many of you know that we had a K2 phonics pilot last year, and now all of our K2 students and teachers are using the phonics unit. And we've really seen a lot of growth with our decoding, increased fluencies, overall just increased reading scores. So some of the things that we've noticed, we do still see, although we've seen growth with some of our ELD and our economically disadvantaged students, we still do see those achievement gaps. We do have that K2 phonics instruction, but we can see that we still have that need for the higher grades, for 3 to 5, to have some more phonics instruction. Our hope is that we kind of write that once we have that intensive K2 instruction with phonics, but our teachers right now are noticing that there is still that need for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. We also discussed about the fact that a lot of our neighboring districts are doing some test skills kind of practicing. So a lot of our students have not taken standardized tests in the past. So a lot of our 3rd graders, the first time that we're really taking a standardized test is when they're taking the MSTEP. So there's been conversations of how do we prepare our students for those standardized tests. And that kind of goes with the next one is the technology skills. So a lot of our kids are really great with the tablets, but when it comes to keyboarding and mouse, using the mouse, like how do we support our students so that that's not the first time that they're using those. So those are ongoing conversations we've having. And then when we look at the whole child, we're also noticing increased challenges with behaviors, emotional regulation, anxiety. And then we're working into the level system for special ed. So we're noticing in our level 3 and level 4, we really do benefit from having the para support or adult supports within the classroom. So thinking about how do we continue to support those students as they're being, pushed into the gen ed classrooms as well. So those are some of our noticings, and then the next step is to think about what do we do? So now that this is the story that the data painted, how do we really support our students and staff in the next steps? So I'm passing that on to Michelle.
Thank you. Again, Michelle Fibeke-Lang, the principal at Way Elementary School. This next slide that I'd like to share is what we are doing to support our students. It's a comprehensive list from all 4 elementary schools. Some of the items listed are either resources, interventions, while some of them are also actionable items that are completed by our staff. One of the examples is Read Naturally. I consider that as a resource that's used to help students with reading fluency, while Reading Recovery is an intervention for our 1st grade readers that are at risk. Phonics instruction, which Harleen was speaking about, K2, is what we would consider a guaranteed curriculum because you can go to all 4 elementary schools and you're going to see the same instruction happening. The bullet listed on here titled Instructional Coaches Collaboration with Teachers. That was listed to highlight that our coaches systematically meet with the teachers regarding curriculum, data, instructional practices, and there are conversations around the district goals, our school goals, personal goals, the dispositions named in our Portrait of a Learner, and much more. And these happen bi-weekly, so that's exciting. As you can see in our list here, we have many things that we're doing for social, emotional learning, and that's always on the forefront. What are we going to do for our students so they can thrive? We as educators know that our students need to feel safe. They must have their basic needs met. We focus on building those positive relationships with all of our students, and that is really a #1 priority. Is it an exhaustive list? I believe it is not, but we also rely on our educators' experiences and best practices that are naturally happening throughout the whole entire school day. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Robert.
Hello, we've shared a little bit about the data, the tools we use, And I think, as Michelle mentioned, our teachers are really the heart of this work. They are our experts. They lead what we call progress monitoring of our students in elementary school and across our grades. And when we talk about progress monitoring, we're talking about responsive teaching. We're talking about teachers looking at their students, collaborating together, forming summative and formative assessments to drive instruction, not just daily, but from hour to hour. And I just want to highlight a few of the things we do to progress monitor. Some of them have been repeated, but what comes of these are a partnership within our schools. We talk about early literacy assessments when we're talking about sight words and sounds and phonemic awareness. We're thinking about where our students are at in that moment, all of the wonderful things that they can do. And then we talk about scaffolding them to the next level, always with a growth mindset. We talk about data digs with our team, as I mentioned earlier, at the building level and the team level. So throughout the year, teams and teachers come together to talk about what they're noticing, not only academically, but the social emotional wellness of our students as well. And we work to progress monitor them, moving them in positive directions. Really, we're seeing all of this really blossom right now at this part of the school year. It's a wonderful time to see our kindergartners getting ready to move into first grade. Teachers are using formative assessments, from writing journals and science and social studies journals and math journals to take a look at, where each student is each day and planning into a workshop model, which means you're teaching a whole group lesson, but you're also talking about small group instruction. And each of these teachers are thinking each day, where are my students at and how am I going to move them to the next level the next day? We have child study teams, school psychologists, social workers coming together with teachers to talk about the needs of the students. We have units of study, writing rubrics, pre and post test. Many of our teachers are such experts at pre-testing students so that we're not teaching students things they already know, but rather scaffolding work for individual students where they're at to move them to the next level. Math talks, thinking protocols, exit tickets, all to gain understanding of, did children understand the lesson taught to them that day? How am I going to help grow them later in the day or tomorrow? Running records, as mentioned earlier, give us a glimpse into the reading levels of our students, all diverse readers who are growing at different rates. Interventionists and classroom teachers are working together to talk about accelerated learning for students who at times need personalized one-on-one intensive instruction, all done in partnership to progress monitor and make sure that 12 to 20 week window is hitting the mark. We're doing a lot of great work with our special education teams, our interventionists, and our classroom teachers to align our interventions and instructions. We're using things called leveled literacy intervention, literacy footprints, to align our instruction, because once we're aligned, we're helping students in multiple areas of the school. If they're in the gen ed classroom or special education, they're receiving that threaded through, echoed instruction throughout the day. Our social emotional engagement, morning meetings, classroom activities drive our knowledge, as Harleen said, of that whole child experience as we're progress monitoring them. So we've provided you a holistic view of our students from data, what we notice, how we support them, and how our teachers, our wonderful teachers, are progress monitoring for growth. We appreciate your time tonight, and we appreciate you listening to us. Thank you.